Although the Electoral College consists of 50 states and 538 Electoral College votes, in the 2024 presidential election, only 7 of those 50 states will actually matter. In today's video, I will be analyzing and predicting each of those states, and it will be in extreme detail. So starting off with the least important of those 7 states here, we're gonna go with the state of North Carolina. This is the only state that Trump was able to carry in the 2020 general election, which is on this list. Now, the reason it's the least important of the 7 states is because Trump won it, and I don't think that Trump will lose any of the states he won in 2020. Now, if you look at the state of North Carolina here, you can see a very interesting trend. It is pretty consistent across the United States. The rural areas generally go red, and the urban areas generally go blue. Currently in polling, we see that Trump maintains a consistent lead over these polls, though by varying different margins, by between about 2% here and upwards of about 15% in his best polls. Now, generally, when we look at the state of North Carolina, there's a couple of places that are considered the big cities. Wake County, Guilford County, and also Mecklenburg. These are the 3 big cities in the state of North Carolina. Generally, Joe Biden lost the state to Donald Trump here by about 75,000 votes. What we see is that, again, these Democratic urban centers are crucial to Biden's victory. Biden got about 66.7% in Mecklenburg, got about 62.3% in Wake County, and got about 60.8% in Guilford County. Democrats also run up the margins in Orange and Durham, which is right next to Raleigh, and also in Forsyth County. But the Republicans are able to run up huge numbers in the rural areas in this kind of panhandle part of the state, and also some of the rural areas. Now, one of the interesting dynamics in the state is that the black rural areas have been trending towards the Republicans, these couple of counties, but Democrats have been able to generally improve in Charlotte and some of its suburbs, and also in Raleigh and some of its relatively urban/suburban regions. What we see in the state is that Democrats are generally unable to win the presidential election, though they have been able to win, again, a lot of the statewide races, specifically the governor's race. Roy Cooper won re-election against Dan Forrest, the Republican, by about 4.5 points, but Democrats have not won it on the presidential level since 2008, and I certainly do not believe that this will be the year that Democrats win the state of North Carolina. In all realisticality, I believe that Trump and Biden will run pretty even as to their 2020 performance in the urban areas, but Biden will drop the ball in the rural areas, especially some of the rural black regions, and ultimately give Trump a win in the state by about 5 percentage points, or pretty much by a likely margin. The next state on this map is the state of Nevada with its 6 electoral votes. The reason it's in 6 is because of the relatively insignificant electoral vote count. However, it is certainly not negligible. 6 electoral votes can still go very far in an election. Now, in the state of Nevada back in 2020, this was one of the few states that actually trended slightly towards the Republican Party. This was because in the state of Nevada here, in Clark County, where Democrats, again, pretty much, this is about 70% of the state's population resides in Clark County. Joe Biden underran Hillary Clinton here by about 1.4 percentage points. Essentially, about 70% of the state's population lives in Clark County. About 15% lives in Washoe County, while the entire rural areas of the state make up less than 15% of the state's population. That's pretty much the population breakdown in the state of Nevada. What we see is that there's no significantly blue county, right? Clark County, Washoe County, the only 2 blue counties of the state, both voted for Joe Biden by single digits. Nevertheless, both those counties combined make up, again, about 85% of the state's population, which is why Democrats generally do win the state of Nevada. Republicans have not contested Nevada in a pretty long time in a presidential race. Democrats have consistently won the state until in 2022, where Joe Lombardo was able to defeat the incumbent Democrat Steve Sisolak in the governor's race. Back in 2008, Barack Obama won the state against John McCain by 12.5%, and after that, Republicans pretty much gave up, especially because the state is not that heavy in terms of the electoral vote count, but as I just mentioned, the state could easily flip with some of the trends. What we see in Clark County here is that Hispanic voters, which make up a very substantial portion of the state's population, about 6 in the entire United States in terms of the minority population, is trending away from the Democrats, and Republicans have one more advantage here. The state of Nevada is among one of the least college-educated states in the United States, which does give the Republicans an advantage because they're able to run up significant numbers in the rural areas, though these counties are really small here. For example, Lincoln County, just about 2,500 votes. We go to White Pine County, about 4,300 votes. Right, these very small counties, but they end up adding up, especially because Trump is getting 84.5%, 77.9%, 76.2%. He's getting huge margins in these rural areas. Though small, they do make a difference. When Democrats are not able to do as well in a county like Clark, if Joe Biden's only able to win it by about 50,000 votes, which I think is a very realistic probability, and then we see that Democrats win Washoe County by a relatively slim margin. I do believe Joe Biden will do actually quite well for Democrat in Washoe County, but when we look at how Republican leading the rural areas are, I do actually believe that Trump will be able to win the state, the first Republican to be able to win the state of Nevada in 2 decades. The last time it went red was in 2004 with George W. Bush. I do believe the state will end up going to the Republican Party by the skin of Trump's teeth by about 1%, or about 15,000 votes. However, I do not believe Nevada will necessarily be the closest state of the election. Now, on number 5 on this map is the state of Georgia. We're getting into a very competitive state, a state that voted for Joe Biden in 2020, and a state that voted for Donald Trump in 2016. In the state of Georgia, however, this is not a must-win for Joe Biden, but it is a must-win for Donald Trump. Trump cannot win the election without the state of Georgia. However, Trump does look very nice right now in the state of Georgia. He holds about a 6.8% lead over Joe Biden. For reference, that is a larger margin than his win in 2016, despite the state having heavily trended towards Democrats over the past 1 to 2 decades or so. What we see in the state of Georgia is that Joe Biden did very, very well in the suburban areas. That goes with many states, but especially in the state of Georgia. If you look at the largest counties in the state, pretty much, if you look at the top 7 counties or so in the state of Georgia, what we see is that Joe Biden did significantly better than Hillary Clinton. Fulton County, by far the largest county by population in the state, about 12 to 13% of the state's population. Joe Biden did about 5 points better than Hillary Clinton. Gwinnett County, the state with about the second largest population, more than 400,000 votes, what we saw was that Joe Biden did 12 points better than Hillary Clinton. In Cobb County, right next door here, Joe Biden did about 12 points better than Hillary Clinton. DeKalb County, the core of the Democratic support, voted for Hillary Clinton by 63, voted for Joe Biden by 67. We go to even more conservative counties, Cherokee County and Forsyth County. Both of these counties voted for Donald Trump by significant margins, by almost 40 points in both instances. But what we saw here was that Trump did 10% worse than what he did in 2016 against Hillary Clinton in Cherokee, and 14 points worse than what he did against Clinton in Forsyth. These are the type of suburban regions that have been heavily trending away from the Republican Party and towards Joe Biden. That contributed to his 12,000 vote lead over Donald Trump in the presidential election race by the skin of his teeth. Again, this was a race that was decided by just 0.23%, the closest state percentage-wise in the 2020 presidential election. Now, what we saw here again was that Trump did not do well in the urban/suburban regions, but he can be able to make up for that. First off, some of the college graduates, they're not so happy with Joe Biden either. Now, they're definitely not going to vote for Donald Trump like they didn't do in 2020, but some of those Biden voters, they might stay home, they might protest Biden over the handling of the Gaza situation right now. And also what we see is that Trump is able to run up huge margins in the rural areas. For example, in MTG's former district, the 14th congressional district, Trump was able to do very, very well in some of these rural areas. Just take a look at a random county here. For example, Dade County, Donald Trump got 81.5% of the vote here. For example, someone like Mitt Romney only got like 70% of the vote here. These are areas that Trump is able to build significant margins in. However, the problem for Trump again is the Atlanta region. Atlanta makes up a huge percentage of the state's population. Just the 4 largest counties in the state make up about 1.8 million votes, maybe even a bit more than that. While the state only had about 5 million votes, we're talking about 1.8 million. Just the Atlanta region is about half of the state's population, which is quite crazy when you think about it. Now we go to some of the rural areas. However, the thing about Trump is that he only needs to make up 12,000 votes, not even accounting for turnout. There's going to be lower Democratic turnout because a lot of Democrats are not energized with Joe Biden and might even vote for someone like RFK Jr., and that's going to cost Biden some votes. And you say that's not a significant number. The thing about this is that Biden won the state by less than 12,000. How many voters does Trump actually need to sway? Not that many. I do believe that the state of Georgia will go for Donald Trump, again by a tilt margin. I think by about 1.5%, which is significantly lower than his 2016 performance, but nonetheless, a win is a win in the crucial battleground state of Georgia. The number 4 state on the list is the state of Arizona. With its 11 electoral votes, it's crucial to both Joe Biden and Donald Trump's pathways of winning the White House. And currently, the Arizona polling, Trump has about a 4% lead. A pretty substantial lead, however, not enough for either side to really be complacent. Trump does have a lead in pretty much every single poll that has been taken by more than 4 points. Nevertheless, if you look at the 2020 presidential election results, you might think that the state actually trended towards the Republican Party. However, it's a similar phenomenon with the state of Nevada, except in the reverse situation. The big population centers of Maricopa and Pima both trended blue by about 5 points. Maricopa County by 5.0 and Pima County by 5.1. As a result, Joe Biden was able to win the state of Arizona by just over 10,000 votes. This was the closest state in terms of raw vote count. However, he grabbed all of its 11 electoral votes. What we saw here is that, again, when you look at the trends here, Maricopa County voted for Donald Trump by 2.8 in 2016, voted for Joe Biden by 2.2 in 2020. Pima County voted for Hillary Clinton by 13.6, voted for Joe Biden by almost 19 percentage points. Again, some of the other smaller counties, they voted heavily towards Donald Trump. Some of them actually trended towards Trump. In fact, if you look at the rural areas of the state, the areas essentially with less population, Graham County, Greenlee County, Yuma County, Santa Cruz County, these are areas that all trended red. Even Santa Cruz, where it's a very liberal county traditionally. However, what we saw here again was those metropolitan areas, those suburban voters, some of the moderate Republicans who just could not have voted for Donald Trump decided to vote for Joe Biden. However, again, when we look at the state, generally speaking, a Democrat has to win Maricopa County to win the state. A Republican also has to. What we see now is that Republicans don't actually need to win Maricopa. If they're able to do very well in a county like Mojave, in a county like Yavapai, and in a county like Yuma, for example, they're able to offset some of their losses in Maricopa County. They still have to be within about 1.5% to about 2%, but they don't necessarily have to win Maricopa. Same applies to Pima. They don't have to run up huge margins in Pima County, and that Joe Biden, as long as he wins this county by like less than 90,000 votes, Republicans are still very much in play in Arizona. And I think that's the pathway that Trump will take in the state of Arizona. It's not necessarily to win back Maricopa County. It's not to win back a lot of those moderate voters. It's to make them disappointed in Joe Biden in his handling of Gaza and all that, and end up not just simply not voting. He doesn't have to win those voters back. It's only about a 10,000 vote gap. Trump can easily make that up in an election where Joe Biden's approval rating is at about 40%, a pretty much historic low for any president, even for Donald Trump standards. So I do believe the state of Arizona here again will go to Trump by a tilt margin. It's going to be a very close race for sure, but I think that just enough suburban voters will be able to sit out the election, not vote for Trump, but also not vote for Biden, for Trump to be able to narrowly win the state. After all, Biden only won the state by about 0.3% in 2020, so it makes sense for me to think that Trump will end up winning the state back in 2024. Going to number 3 on the list, we're really talking about some of the most important states here. Pretty much the tied top 3. First off is the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 10 electoral votes could very well decide the presidency. Now, in the state of Wisconsin back in 2020, Joe Biden won the state by just 20,000 votes, a little bit over that, or 0.63%, winning all 10 of its electoral votes. Now, in the state of Wisconsin, really you can divide the state into 5 important things. First off, how well are Democrats able to do, first off, in Madison County and in Milwaukee County? Those are 2 of the most important counties in the state in terms of how well Democrats are energized to end up actually voting. We see that Democrats really have 2 vote centers, and those are Dane County and Milwaukee County. Both of them are able to pump out about 180,000 votes for a Democrat in 2020. Biden pretty much got 360,000 net votes in both of those counties, and those are the two most important counties for Democrats to rack up their numbers. Now, for the third thing here, it's really Ron Kind's previous district, or this area where my mouse is currently located. It's really where a lot of those Democrats who previously voted heavily for Democrats now switch over to Republicans. Those are the type of working class voters that reside in this part of the Ron Kind's district. Ron Kind was able to win some 60% of the district and win pretty much every single county in his district back in around 2016 and 2018. However, pretty much now Republicans are winning pretty much every single one of these counties. What Democrats need to do is to be able to keep those numbers tight and end up really doing well in the next area, which are the WOW counties. Republicans need to run up the numbers in the WOW counties, specifically Waukesha County, Washington County, and Ozaukee County. That's why it's called WOW, W-O-W. Pretty much in those three counties, in terms of the net vote, Trump lost about 32,000 votes. Trump lost by the state by just over 20,000. So there was more than enough votes for Republicans to end up picking up in the WOW counties, but because of Trump's incompetence in that part of the state, he was not able to do well enough to win the state. He was able to do very well in the rural areas, but not well enough in those type of regions. What we see is that Trump's really significant strength in the state of Wisconsin and pretty much across pretty much every single state across the board are those rural counties. We saw that Trump did exceptionally well for a Republican. Many of these counties really gave Romney or McCain about 55% of the vote. In fact, Mitt Romney and John McCain lost many of these rural areas that Trump got like 60-something% of the vote in. However, they were able to do better in the WOW counties. What Trump needs is a combination of doing better in the WOW counties, having lower Democratic turnout, or or pretty much better numbers in the rural areas. I think his most probable way of ending up being able to win the state back again is through his final path, getting a huge turnout in some of the rural areas and high percentages, something he has proven yet time and time again that he is able to do. I think that doing better in the WOW counties is a long shot, and getting Democrats to vote for him in Madison and Milwaukee is very much impossible. What Trump also needs to focus on is pretty much suppressing turnout, using RFK as a weapon to pretty much deject a lot of Democrats from voting for Joe Biden. What Democrats need to do is pretty much suppress your rural turnout and pretty much just run up the numbers in Madison County and Milwaukee. Remember, the rural areas in the state of Wisconsin, they're pretty red, but they're not as red as some of the other states. And that's when, if Democrats are able to drive up these huge numbers in Milwaukee, as they did in 2020, they could have afforded to make some losses in the rural areas and still been able to flip the state. The state will be exceptionally close in the 2024 election. Right now, I have Trump winning the state by about 0.5%, which is again sufficient for a tilt margin. Previously, at its peak, I had Trump winning the state by about 2. Now it's down to about 0.5%. It's a very, very close state. Going to the state of Michigan here, which is now, in the second most important state, that would be the state of Michigan, a must-win for President Joe Biden, not so much for former President Donald Trump. How if he is able to win the states of Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, or win the state of Pennsylvania, which we'll cover later. Now, in Michigan's polling right now, Trump has a 1.5% lead over Joe Biden, way within the margin of error. And if you look at some of the polls here, you can see that Trump has a 15% lead in an outlier. Otherwise, the state is still quite close. Now, in 2020, Democrats were able to win the state of Michigan on the basis of the suburban appeal, specifically in counties like Oakland County, Livingston County, right around the Grand Traverse area, and most notably in Kent County. Joe Biden was the first Democrat in 60 years to flip the Kent County on the presidential level. Even when Obama won the state by 15 points in 2008, he was unable to win Kent County, because this is the type of suburban region that really Democrats have been able to make significant gains in over the past 2 decades or so. Right, we look at the Kent County over here. If you look at the population, this is the 4th most populated in the state. And what we saw is that Joe Biden's significant gains in that county helped him win the state. Now, another county he made significant gains in is the county of Macomb, which is right outside of Detroit, the second most populated county in the state. This is the type of white college-educated, very wealthy county in terms of the median class income, well above the United States average, also well above Detroit and its neighbor, Macomb County. What we saw in 2020 was that the county shifted 6 points towards Joe Biden, the type of suburban county that Democrats do really well in. Now, not so well in a county like Macomb, where Trump was able to get some very, very much huge numbers, historic for a Republican back in 2016. Now, Trump's pathway to winning the state is really not through, again, the suburban regions. Trump cannot afford to lose more ground in a county like Oakland, where Joe Biden was able to win by 110,000 votes. And if you look at the county of Kent, Joe Biden was able to win that by 22,000. When we add up those two counties together, that's about 132,000 votes, which pretty much matches with Joe Biden's 155,000 vote win in the state of Michigan. Trump needs to stop the bleeding in these suburban regions and really have lower Democratic turnout in a county like Wayne County, where Detroit is located. Again, we saw a lot of uncommitted votes in a Democratic primary in the state of Michigan. If that holds and a lot of those voters don't vote, that's a very good sign for Donald Trump. What Trump also needs is those rural areas, right? The rural areas in Michigan are actually quite populated for a rural area. If you look at some of these counties here, they don't seem like a lot. Again, similar story with some of the other states. For example, let me just find a county that I can pronounce here. For example, Benzie County, right? Small population. We go to another county here, for example, St. Clair County. Again, relatively small populations, but these areas, they add up. If Trump is picking up 25,000 votes here, maybe 10,000 votes here, right? Those numbers add up, and they can offset the big Democratic suburbs. And also the urban areas like Washtenaw County and Wayne County. Those are two Democratic pockets, huge Democratic pockets here in the state. Joe Biden netted about 450,000 votes in just those two counties alone. They are heavily Democratic. And what really Democrats need to end up doing in the state is run up those numbers. If they're able to get high turnout, high numbers in those suburban regions, Trump just can't catch the Democrats. What Trump needs to do is get those rural areas to turn out for him, and he'll be able to win the state, along with some of those uncommitted voters protesting against Joe Biden, not by voting for Trump, but just simply staying home. Now, right now, just based on how high the uncommitted vote was in the state, I do believe that Trump will end up nearly winning the state of Michigan by like 0.3%. It's going to be a very close race, a similar margin to his 2016 win in the state of Michigan. It's a very close race, though I do believe that Trump will end up winning the state of Michigan in the general presidential level. Now, the final and most important state is the state of Pennsylvania with its 19 electoral votes. Currently, Trump does not need it as he has won every single other competitive state. In their current polling here, Trump is up by about 2% over Joe Biden, holding 43.8% to 41.8%, though a substantial margin, not necessarily enough to win the state comfortably, and we don't really know because the polls are still quite inaccurate in many of these Rust Belt states. In 2020, Biden was able to win the state by about 1.2 percentage points. And how does Biden or Trump win the state? Well, the key to winning the state for Democrats lies in the Philadelphia suburbs. Biden actually did worse than Hillary Clinton did in Philadelphia, the largest county by far in the state's population, by 3.5 points. Now, I know Allegheny is at a close second, but it's all the way over here. Again, the key lies for Democrats to winning the state is the 5 counties surrounding Philadelphia. Those 5 counties, which are highlighted pretty much here, except the county of Allegheny, make up quite a significant population. We're talking about 2.5 million votes out of the 7 million cast. So about a third of the state's population is in these 5 counties. Add Allegheny to that total, and we're close to half of the state's population resides in just 6 of the state's 90-something counties. Now, really, what Democrats need to do is that they need to run up the numbers, right? Democrats have a very solid number in Philadelphia. They have quite solid numbers in Delaware County and Montgomery County. What they need to run up with is the county of Bucks, which is one of the less populated of these counties. But again, this is the type of region where Democrats need to do very, very well in. Also, a county like Chester, right? Chester was a historically very red county. Now it's solidly voting for Democrats because they're very college educated. They really resent Republicans like Donald Trump. However, where can Trump make up for those differences? About a 70,000 vote gap may seem like a pretty significant one, but there are quite a lot of rural counties which are very populated in the state of Pennsylvania here. One of the counties I like to point out is Westmoreland, a county where Democrats again are at around 35%. If Trump are able to run up these numbers in the counties surrounding Pittsburgh, the area where Trump actually did very well compared to previous Republicans, he could easily be able to win back the state, right? Perry County, right over here, for example, a county like Huntington, Republicans are only netting at like 11.5 thousand votes, but these counties again kind of add up. And given that the state of Pennsylvania is more populated, so are the rural areas. What Trump's pathway to victory in the state of Pennsylvania is keeping it close in a county like Bucks, in a county like Chester, really keeping it close, keeping the margins down, turning off some of the voters in Philadelphia County to just not let them not vote for Trump, but just not vote in general. If they stay at home, that's kind of like a vote for Donald Trump, because those voters generally do end up supporting Joe Biden. What Biden needs to do is pretty much do very well in the suburban regions. Democrats have the votes to win in the state of Pennsylvania because they have a lot of these suburban areas which are densely populated. What ultimately decides the state, though, I believe, is not the rural areas. It's really the turnout and the numbers for Joe Biden in these kind of suburban regions. We all know that Biden's going to win a county like Chester, although it was previously Republican, and we probably agree that Bucks County, a county like this, will end up voting for Joe Biden. However, the margins is what matters. If Joe Biden's able to win the county by like 1,000 votes or by like 30,000 votes, that is a big difference. Ultimately, I do believe Biden will win because, again, the suburbs are hugely populated in the state of Philadelphia, in the state of Pennsylvania. They're hugely trending blue, and I do believe that Biden will be able to narrowly win the state of Pennsylvania here by about a tilt margin by about 0.5%, pretty much matching Trump's margin in the state of Pennsylvania back in 2016. Now, in conclusion, when we pretty much fill in every other state, regardless if they're kind of competitive or not, we see that Joe Biden is at 245 electoral votes to Donald Trump at 293 electoral votes. That is a pretty okay win for the former president, especially because Joe Biden is the incumbent. However, it's still not necessarily super comfortable for Trump. If we see that Joe Biden is able to win the states of Wisconsin and Michigan, that brings Trump to exactly 268 and Joe Biden to exactly 270. That means Biden does win the election. The election is still very tight. We see that, again, Democrats need to win the Rust Belt. Trump, preferably for him, would win the state of Pennsylvania. Right now, it's still a close election, but I do believe as of right now, that Trump is favored in the entire election because pretty much he is able to win pretty much all of the really competitive states except the state of Pennsylvania. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Only about 1.2% of you are actually subscribed to my YouTube channel, so please subscribe. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.